So the segment today on the Transformer podcast really is an amalgamation of a larger conversation that I had over the past 24 hours in relation to the Beast Wars retro vintage line and the future of it. It kind of was birthed out of us having a big discussion about these Pacific region, Asian region coins that are going to be issued out in relation to the reissue line itself for the Asian market. There's going to be these, I guess, coin sets that come in a fancy box with a gold trading card, and they come in either a pair of an Optimus Primal and a Megatron with pretty much their original 1996 box art on these coins with 25th anniversary Beast Wars on the back, or a Cheetor Rat Trap coin set, and again, same story. Original 1995 box art and a gold trading card, and they come in a fancy box and all of that. And it just kind of spurned this whole discussion that if these kind of product are existing, and they've done this kind of stuff with the Masterpiece line and select kind of premium products from the Takara Tomy side of things, but it shows us that there's a potential that there could be more of this line, and there could be more in the future. Not so much the coins, but so much that this line could continue, this retro vintage line. And what it means for, number one, the investment value of people that have Beast Wars product and are trying to get rid of it right now and having a very difficult time, and people who want to get into buying Beast Wars product and should they wait and pick this stuff up, considering that so far a lot of reports who have picked up early versions of these retro vintage stuff, of the Beast Wars stuff, there's a lot of similarities to the original to the point that it's not a big deal. I've had this discussion many times in the past about how certain old Beast Wars toys just didn't age well in terms of their market value. Something like Deluxe Rhinox, for example. Ignore all the buy it nows on eBay and stuff. Look at the sold listings. There are some complete Rhinoxes that are going for $6, $7, when his original MSRP back in 1996 was $10, so it really is like a very badly aging. And now Rhinox might be a bad example because there's so many better toys of him that are out there now, and with Transformers, it's not so, especially with the collectors, it's not so much the history and the lineage of those toys as so much I want to have the best version of that character, and older versions don't mean anything. And not to mention there's millions of Rhinoxes out there. So it's not like it's a rare figure on top of that. Millions of those deluxe Rhinoxes were sold back in 96. So it goes back to the conversation of what is going to be next and how is it going to affect the market, where we have a Primal, we have a Megatron, we have a Cheetor, and we have a Rat Trap. Now, Rat Traps have been infamous for losing their guns, and they're probably the least common of the four in the secondary market from my personal experience buying and selling Transformers for decades. And it's just, that's the one that oddly enough also is the one that's kind of a ripoff when you look at what his MSRP is, where I think it's $22.87 at Walmart, which, I mean, if you were buying a brand new 100% complete Rat Trap at a Transformer convention like 2 years ago, let's say, and you paid $30, I'd be like, okay, you overpaid a little bit, but sure. So it's something where now when those are going to hit the market in large numbers, and people are going to buy it and they're going to open them, and then the loose ones that are going to hit the market too, and the mixture of accessories and stuff like that, the Rat Trap value is just going to tank. And it's the only thing where only Rocky Bubble carded Rat Traps and the sealed market and that small group of collectors who like mint sealed carded figures, they'll have their market and that'll do okay. But the loose market is just going to go in the toilet, even the vintage ones, considering how similar they will be of each other. And Cheetor, oof. There's so many of Cheetor out there, just with the variations alone, with Blue Eye and Red Eye and Green Eye, and then the reissues that came afterwards with the Telemocho line and the Beast Wars 10th anniversary. And granted, they're all different from each other. But the value and the demand is just like, same thing. It's going to be a $22.97 figure at Walmart after taxes maybe $25 when it's said and done. But, you could take 4 of those Cheetors. You might as well just get the Masterpiece one in a lot of ways, if you could still find it. I don't know. The market's kind of weird right now with Masterpieces from Beast Wars. But it's the same thing even with the Ultras, with the Primal and the Megatron, where there's just so many better figures of those 2 iterations that why would you even get this thing for $50 at Walmart? So it falls into what would we want to see next and how much would that shake up the market? Because, people always say to me, like, well, what would you want to see? And this is coming from someone that has every single Beast Wars toy ever made. UK, Japan, USA. That was one of the very first lines, aside from obviously, like, I guess, Machine Wars and Beast Machines, that I completed very easily. Just because it was very readily available. The Truck Not Monkey was very strong in the early 2000s, so people didn't care about Beast Wars, let alone Beast Wars 2nd and Beast Wars Neo. So I was able to secure a lot of that product during a time where no one cared. It's just how the world is. So for me, it's not really about my investment. Do I have loose, complete Beast Wars stuff that I sell at parts parties and stuff? Of course. Find them all the time in the wild. People drop collections on me. So yeah, if something comes around and, right away completely bottlenecks and destroys the value of some of these figures, it will be more difficult for me to sell them. I'll probably be sitting on a complete Rhinox forever until I drop it to like $1. Then someone will buy it, ironically, I guess. But it does get to a point where it's like, well, what is going to be next and how is that going to affect the market? And I look at like the retro vintage line of the G1 stuff that came out, 2 years ago? Oh, man. The big V really messed up my time frame. 2018 was when it started. So 4 years ago, imagine. Oof. The G1 Bumblebee Outback Swerve tailgate, the Hot Rod Starscream and Devastator, that very first initial wave. And you right away saw that, at least with those guys, there was no rhyme or reason and a specific year. Bumblebee is 84, but Outback is 86. Hot Rod is 86, Starscream is 84, Devastator is 84. So they're kind of all over the first 3 years right there. And not to mention when you talk like later on, Blaster, Optimus, Soundwave, Astro Train, you get some 85 guys, 84 guys in there. So it's really what molds were available to them. They weren't making decisions based on any kind of chronological order in G1's era, especially when you get into, like, say, the Dino cassettes, which is 87. So it's something that it's really what molds are at our disposal, and then we'll do those, and especially those molds, because, the Starscreams, the Hot Rods, the Bumblebees, all of those were recent Takara reissues, recent Japanese reissues, recent American book box reissues when it was a commemorative line. So I look at the same thing with Beast Wars, and I go, like, what molds do we think are still kicking around for reissues? Number one, if we stick to price points, right? Okay, so everything that's going to be in that deluxe or basic price point could potentially be done again, and it's called a mega. That's what they call this price point, the $22.97 price point, which Cheetor and Rat Trap are under. So when you look at the basics, you got Rat Trap in there along with Razor Beast, Armadillo, Insecticons, Snapper. I think Iguanus is in there. Yeah, Iguanus. Like, who do you pick from that? And the only one that I see there that, kind of makes sense is Pterosaur. Like, Pterosaur is like that show character. And that mold not too long ago was used in Age of Extinction, as crazy as that sounds. It was used for Strafe. They did some, 2-pack where they repainted Pterosaur and they made him Dinobot Strafe in a Age of Extinction package. So that mold is clearly still kicking around, and I wouldn't be surprised if Pterosaur is slapped in a reissue package of anything to keep that trademark floating and keep him out there. So I could see Pterosaur being one of them. And then you ask yourself, well, how does that affect the market? Well, Pterosaur was, once again, one of those figures that there was millions of them out there. And unless you're talking a missing accessory, which he had this little gun that was stored behind his head in in pterodactyl mode, and then when he transformed, he held it in his hand. Always got lost, that little accessory. Super easy to lose that little gun. Very tiny gun. Aside from that, I mean, I've seen so many pterosaurs, so many. So would the reissue affect the market? No. If anything, when that reissue comes out for $22.97, I would still suggest buying the original, probably complete, for $15, loose complete. So will Hasbro do it? Maybe. They probably will. Will it be worth it to buy it when the original toy from 1996 is considerably cheaper complete? Yeah, probably. You might as well just get that one. So it falls more into those deluxes and stuff, and some of the more difficult ones. I've always said, personally, me, and again, I don't care how it affects my own personal value of my collection, but like, I feel that deluxe price point, that's your time to do Ravage X9. I have Ravage X9. I had 2 Ravage X9s. I remember I sold my second one to Decepticon Army because I got it so cheap that I was just like, hey, Phil, want to get it? You know, and he was super happy to get it. So Ravage X9 is one of those that I feel would have a good place, and people would love to buy that because of how obscure and difficult that figure was to get, even in the Japanese market, oddly enough. And, you know, the reason, the whole thing why it's called Ravage X9 was because it was the X9 number in the Beast Wars line. It was an extra on the side along with a lot of the other X series kind of stuff, which were play sets and 2-packs and special stuff like that. So, I mean, I would dig Ravage X9 being part of that. People would dig that a lot. And I mean, I'm pretty sure in that case, a lot of people would have no problem paying $22.97 for that price point for a Ravage X9, for sure. And people would dig it in the same way that when those Dino cassettes were done in a little bit more of affordable 3-pack with that Frenzy reissue, a lot of people bought that because it was an affordable reissue of a very, I guess, at least within a certain part of the fandom, valuable, iconic kind of product. Not a very mainstream kind of group of characters. Dino cassettes are not very mainstream popular. Far from it, if anything, but they still sold very well due to the fact of how expensive the originals are. And Ravage X9, which, I mean, last I checked was like $200 complete in the box. Yeah, I think a lot of people would just like that. Now, the question is that mold still kicking around? Is it still available? The last time we saw it was a Beast Wars, BotCon 2001 Tigatron. Is that mold still kicking around after it went into use for that? That is to be determined, but it is something to consider. Otherwise, you fall into, do you use Tarantulas? Do you revisit Dinobot? Do you go to Rhinox? There's so many of those molds that, again, would people want to buy them? I think that the choice of characters that they picked for the first wave with Primal, Megatron, Cheetor, and Rat Trap were really based on the popularity of those characters, as opposed to people wanting to buy them from an investment standpoint, because you could probably still get a Cheetor for under $25 complete. You could probably still get an Optimus Primal and a Megatron for probably under $50 complete, the originals. So you're really selling it for the name of the character more so than its market value compared to what's out there right now. But it gets deeper, and that's why I feel that they should almost fall in it. Part of me feels you got to fall onto characters that you're selling to that other percentage of the market that doesn't know about the secondary market and just goes, oh man, I remember owning that Cheetor as a kid. Now I could own it again with the original classic packaging. Like it's aimed more at those people, because us as collectors, we're more smart to the secondary market and buying and knowing what's out there, that for us it doesn't really serve a purpose. And that's where it's like you could have one figure be that mainstay character that'll target that casual audience, which make up a majority of the purchases regardless what anyone says, which could be Waspinator, Dinobot, Tarantulas, Rhinox. Rhinox would be the painful one because, again, we all know what that secondary market value is. But then when you fall onto the other one, because they come in cases of 4, and you get 2 of each. That's where you stick in the Ravage X9, because it'll target, number one, the hardcore fans will eat it up, and number two, in a small percentage of the non-hardcore fans, they'll be like, oh wow, Ravage X9. Well, they'll say Ravage anyhow. I remember him, he was in season 2 or something, or if they have any vague memory of it at all, or if they even watched past season 1. So it's something that, yeah, maybe, and then the irony will happen that then all of a sudden Ravage X9, the reissue, becomes a shelf warmer because it doesn't sell well. But I think the opposite will happen. I think he'll probably get scalped like crazy. I think people will buy him up in big numbers because of what his long-term value will be, because it'll be one of the few other ways to get that character outside of some really good third-party stuff kicking around. So that's one way I see it. That's one way. And then when we look at like that ultra price point, which Primal and Megatron are at right now, I mean, I don't know if they're going to maintain that price point, because then you start like really inching forward to going like, well, what are you going to do? Try Predicus and Magnaboss? Like they're going to stick, throw those guys in there, or right away jump to the Transmetals with Rampage and Depth Charge. I think they're going to probably move around, maybe do the mega price point, which I guess you could call Voyagers today. I don't know. It's the numbers don't really add up. But then it's like, do you do Inferno? Do you put Inferno? Do you put Scorponok? Do you go for the non-show characters like Polar Claw and Baboom and Transketo, which Transketo historically, even back in the peak of 1997 Beast Wars, was a terribly shelf-warming figure along with Inferno? Do you want to revisit that all again? So it gets a little complicated with that too when it comes to what do you do afterwards with those other price points and who do you pick. But all we do know is it won't affect us too much, because if anything, it's going to make the secondary market of those characters that we don't have cheaper. So then you could then go back and, oh, well, they reissue Baboom. Now I could get a Baboom cheaper, So it's something that you could look at like that. But all I'm going to say pretty much is, if you're someone who's holding on to sell non-show characters of Beast Wars, I think you're safer in that area. If you have a complete, Deluxe K9, I love Deluxe K9, by the way, love that toy. Him and Wolfang, both of them. I think you're a lot safer than, say, if you're someone who has like you're sitting on a whole bunch of show characters and thinking about reselling them one day, like, again, Black Arachnia, Dinobot. I think those are the ones that are probably going to be targeted more, if anything. But it really has to do also with what is available at Hasbro's fingertips in terms of molds. It's just something that's been kicking around. And again, will they go into Transmetals and Fusors and something? That's the rumor. The rumor is maybe they're just going to jump into the next thing, and we'll just see, like, again. And if they do, then even more so a reason to do Ravage X9, because then that falls more into the Transmetals and stuff like that. You could do Ravage X9, and then you could do Rat Trap. Do a non-flaky, chrome not flaking off Rat Trap. And, that was something that was done in the 10th anniversary Beast Wars line, where Rat Trap they used the Transmetal version. So that mold's probably kicking around. That mold's probably those 10th anniversary Beast Wars toys, and the Telemucha stuff that came, I think, 2 years after that, show that those molds are still kicking around somewhere. So we'll see what happens. Who would you like to see? Name me two deluxes. Excuse me, not two deluxes. Two deluxe / basic scales, because they're going to be listed under that mega price point. So name two based on those two, and then name two mega. This is so confusing. Mega price point, ultra price point as two right there too, because they'll probably rope those guys in together. They'll probably put something they'll put Depth Charge in the same packaging as Baboom, and they'll still sell it at the same price. Watch this. But either way, who would you like to see? Name 4 figures pretty much that you'd like to see for a wave 2, and give us an idea. And then after that, we could kind of rumble on, well, now your decisions, how does that affect the secondary market afterwards? Are those figures reissued? Are they going to be the better bet because what you're reissuing is a cheaper alternative than what the secondary market is? Or even though you reissue it, it'll still be cheaper to buy the originals loose complete in the secondary market, like a Rhinox, for example. So consider that, if you will, and let me know what you think.